Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast. Farmers growing sugar beet are worried about a new deal allowing more tariff-free raw sugarcane into the UK. First, we quite often talk about new farm machinery, high-tech, big shiny tractors, but many farmers do have a soft spot for vintage items. So when an unrivalled collection of antique farm wagons and horse-drawn carts amassed over the last 40 years came up for auction, there was a huge amount of interest. Vernon Harwood was at the sale on a farm near Shaftesbury in Dorset.
What a fantastic collection of carts and wagons, ladies and gents. Believed to be one of the biggest collections ever sold. What a privilege, what an honour to be able to stand up here and sell all of Dave Mills's wagons and carts. So
it's a bit of a strange day, really, but the time's come when I've got to downsize, and I hope they'll find some nice new homes for other people.
Good morning, I'm Howard Pugh, HJ Pugh & Co auctioneers at Ledbury. Brilliant. I love to see them in their original condition.
It's a grey autumn morning, but it's brightened up by 60 remarkable horse-drawn carts, wagons, drays, many of them lined up here in 2 rows in this field. This really is out of Laurie Lee, isn't it?
It is, absolutely right, yes. Wherever do you find another collection as good as this?
The Cornish wagon. £200 the Cornish wagon, £100, let's go.
They're so individual. You've got the different variants throughout the counties, the size, the shape, the colour.
And they differed county to county because of the differing terrain, the different crops that were being harvested, the different materials available.
And the broader wheeled wagons, they were designed for wet ground.
So the Fenlands of Cambridgeshire, you need that.
And also, is if you start going up Lincolnshire, Staffordshire, up around there where it was flatter, the wagons tended to be bigger.
You take card.
Debit card only.
Yeah, that's fine.
What have you got your eye on?
A couple of carts just to keep the tradition going, really. There's a nice green one over there, a small one.
That's the Covent Garden Fruitiers Dray.
It just attracts me because of the colour and the combination, really.
It's the Suffolk wagon with the centre shafts as well. Well, let's go straight in at £2,000.
Philip Merrick's travelled here from Kent today. How many wagons have you bought?
Quite a number, probably too many, but this is a wonderful bit of history, and the important point, Vernon, that this is recognised as a bit of conservation, and I'm pleased to be able to do it.
That report from Vernon Harwood in Dorset. Now, it's been a really tough year for arable farmers. Government figures for the sector are due out next week, and we expect they'll show losses of hundreds of millions of pounds. But the prospects for next year's crops are looking much more promising, according to the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board. Helen Plant is their senior analyst for cereals and oilseeds.
We've had much better planting conditions, thankfully. Pretty much all crops in the ground by the end of November, and most emerged as well, so coming up and growing well. And when we've looked at the sort of crop conditions, over 80% of all our winter crops in a good or excellent condition, which is a big relief after last year. If I just give you some comparison for wheat, 18% of wheat hadn't been planted by the end of November last year, and only 44% was in a good or excellent condition, so a real contrast on the year.
Of course, we have got the spring planting to come, haven't we? There are some areas of the country which are still pretty dry, and actually the soil moisture deficit is quite high in places. So what do farmers need to get a good crop in the ground in springtime if they have decided to plant then?
We'll be looking for sort of kind weather over the winter, regular but I suppose not too heavy rainfall. And then I guess next year it's going to be about the timing of the rainfall, dry periods to allow crops to get in, a bit like this autumn, and then some rain to help those crops grow on.
We did have some predictions from the Met Office. They weren't expecting hugely massive amounts of rainfall over and above normal levels, which is what they said we actually needed to fill up again after such a terrible drought over the summertime. How do you think farmers are actually feeling then about this year, looking towards next year's harvest now?
I'd say the conditions have helped, certainly. Being able to get what they wanted in the ground this autumn is certainly a big win, and the fact things are growing well is helping. But there is still a lot of underlying challenges, the main one being the margins. So even though we're looking ahead more positively towards crops for next harvest, the prices for those are still low, and the costs for growing those crops have increased as well. I was looking earlier at ammonium nitrate, which is one of the big fertilisers used. Those prices are around 15% higher than 12 months ago. So there's still challenging from a farming perspective, but it's always much better when crops are growing well.
Helen Plant, Senior Analyst for Cereals and Oilseeds at the AHDB. Campaigners in Scotland have warned developments of battery storage sites for renewable energy could blight the countryside. The charity Action to Protect Rural Scotland, or APRS, is publishing a study today which says there are plans for 4 times more battery storage plants than are needed for the transformation to green energy. That, it says, means unnecessary damage, planning blight and lost farmland across Scotland. Richard Baines reports.
Directly over the road, the proposal is to put in battery energy storage.
Gordon Forbes lives near Faifley on the edge of Clyde Bank.
It's going to take in maybe 4 fields, dozens of sites far more suited to a battery storage than Greenbelt, which is farmed. Cattle were in there the other week. They use it for their haylage. It's just a waste of farmland.
The site here will cover 28 hectares, or about 40 football fields worth, of greenbelt land. A likely reason to put it here is that it's near a major electricity substation, and overhead cables here fizz with electricity. Giant batteries to store excess renewable power are essential for Scotland to meet green energy targets. Figures from the UK National Electricity Supply Operator indicate Scotland will need around 6 gigawatts of battery storage by 2030. But the APRS report shows that more than twice this amount already has planning consent. As much again is awaiting permission.
The field on the left is where the battery storage will be. But you can see it's really big. It stretches all the way up to the trees, perhaps about half a kilometre away, that you can see in the distance.
Kat Jones is the director of APRS.
There hasn't been a single application for a large battery storage site that has been declined, and only 7 out of around 50 that we've looked at that are decided by government have been asked to do an environmental impact assessment. Some of these sites, there's woodland, farmland. The impact on this place is going to be really big. It's going to be mainly hard standing, so you're also going to have impacts on hydrology as well as biology.
A big concern for APRS is that at least 32 battery sites are on Greenbelt.
They are the only type of industrial installation that is currently acceptable to put into greenbelts and is being consented. It's completely inappropriate for this rural landscape to have tens of hectares of hard standing on it, which will essentially just be covered in shipping containers. And of course, at the end of that, will it remain a brownfield site and then become another industrial installation? We should be looking at these going into brownfield sites, into more appropriate places.
APRS has, however, been unable to come up with a precise figure for battery sites on Greenbelt. Researcher Katie Woodward filed a Freedom of Information request to the Energy Consents Unit at Holyrood, which deals with the bigger sites.
Their response was effectively, the Energy Consents Unit do not ask applicants for that information. They don't know because they're not tracking the information, they're not asking for the information from developers in the first place.
It's developer-led, so it depends where the developers can find landowners who will option their sites. It's not a strategic plan with a spatial element where you know where you need the battery storage and where you need the energy. What we need is a much, much more strategic approach from government.
In response, the Scottish Government said potential impacts on communities, nature and cultural heritage from battery schemes are important considerations in decision-making. All applications have site-specific assessments and the system ensures local communities can have their say.
Richard Baines reporting. British sugar beet farmers are concerned that a significant rise in tariff-free imports of raw cane sugar could damage the industry. Home-produced sugar is made from beet, processed by British Sugar and sold as Silver Spoon. We recently reported that the price beet farmers will receive next year had dropped to £30 a tonne. Raw cane sugar, mostly imported from Brazil and the Caribbean, is processed by Tate & Lyle in its factory in London and sold under their brand. Well, now the government's announced that 325,000 tonnes of raw cane sugar will be tariff-free from January the 1st. That's a 25% increase by volume. I asked Dr. John Glenn, Chief Economist at the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, to explain the impact.
We import roughly about 650 tonnes of raw sugar, so that half of that roughly will now become tariff-free, and we probably use about 1.5 million tonnes of raw sugar a year in the United Kingdom that goes into the refinery process. So that gives you a feel for what's happening.
The problem is that sugar beet growers here who grow sugar in the ground, which is then processed at British Sugar factories, mainly in the east of the country, next year they're getting a pretty low price for their sugar beet. And actually it's quite a bit lower than it was this year. And the reason the National Farmers Union has told us, which we interviewed them a couple of weeks ago, said is because there's global oversupply of sugar. Is that right?
We have a situation where sugar producers in the United Kingdom have been protected for a large number of years. And as a result of that, the production of raw sugar beet has been a relatively profitable thing to do. What we've now seen is that with the exit of the UK from Brexit, farming has not got as many protectionist barriers as it previously had. And this is, if you like, one of the costs of Brexit for the farming community is reduced protection. If you then look at this from a consumer's perspective, one could argue that we've been paying a higher price for sugar than would be the case if we didn't have the protection.
The thing is, the National Farmers Union say the quota is concerning, unnecessary and unjustified. Do you agree?
It's almost, they would say that, wouldn't they? I mean, we've got a quota that one might say is unjustified from a consumer's perspective and unnecessary from a consumer's perspective because it artificially keeps the price of the input product into the sugar process higher and therefore means that we pay a higher price for sugar and sugar products in the shops. Now, one might argue that from a health perspective, that's a good thing. But at this point in time, the argument that the government would seem to be pursuing is that for consumers, it makes sense for the price of sugar to be lower.
What do you think then the impact will be on sugar beet farmers here when this does come in on the 1st of January? Will they actually notice a difference?
Yes, they will notice a difference. At the margin, what will happen, as is what happens in any competitive market, and economists across the world will tell you this, the efficient producers will remain in the market, the efficient producers will remain profitable and maybe at slightly lower levels of profit, and those who are the least efficient producers will make the decision to leave the market.
Dr. John Glenn from the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. That's all from us this morning. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Sally Challoner. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.